Human trafficking in our community, it's happening.
It's a multi-billion-dollar worldwide criminal enterprise, and it's growing exponentially.
It's happening in our schools, specifically in Sudbury because we are a hub.
Sudbury is considered a hub for human trafficking because of the intersections of Highway 11, Highway 69, Highway 144, and Highway 17.
When we're looking at further north in like very rural areas with mining companies and having fly-in camps and things like that, there is a rather large business there for trafficking.
Traffickers are able to utilize those highway systems to have a large loop throughout the province of Ontario, specifically Northern Ontario, accessing those towns such as Sault Ste. Marie, Timmins, North Bay, as well as Sudbury and Manitoulin area.
Northern Ontario is really built on the Northern experience, and we know that the Northern experience is unique. It's vast geography, it's isolation, it isn't access to resources that may be available in other areas.
Traffickers are very keen at spotting different either mental health issues or any other type of things that make the victims susceptible, drug dependency, emotional needs.
Housing is really difficult, no schooling, them having to travel away from their communities to go to school, so they're away from their families.
And they tend to fill that void. They also girlfriend them. There are different types of traffickers. One in particular we refer to as the Romeo pimp, where they will love bomb the victims and show them attention, buy them a lot of expensive gifts, and then they change their approach. Now they become abusive and they introduce their girlfriend into the game.
Generally, the biggest misconception we see about human trafficking is it's seen to be international trafficking. We often hear about it as people being brought from third world countries over here to be domestic workers. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about girls and women living in our community that are exploited by criminals who want to manipulate them for the business of sex.
Having an understanding of what trauma is extremely important for anybody of any culture.
It's something that affects everybody, whether it affects you personally or affects somebody that you love.
We all have pain, we all have experiences that we go through that change who we are as people.
From all walks of life, all backgrounds, all educations, they are our sisters, our mothers, our aunts, our best friends.
I think the biggest atrocities that happen in Canada with to Indigenous men and women is, of course, colonization, racism, all the losses that they've experienced, loss of land, loss of culture, loss of language. And then, of course, the biggest trauma is the kids that were taken to residential school.
The way I understand it personally is my grandparents were victims of this initial trauma, and then they learned to behave a certain way. And then when they were done with the residential schools, they did not know how to be parents the way their parents were and so forth before them. They were angry, they didn't know how to deal with all the effects that happened.
They were taught not out of love, they were taught out of pain and hate, and those things travel between families. So if abuse was normal as at residential school, and then you go and have children, that's how you raise your children, because that's how you were raised.
All that they had was taken away from them, so they were horribly traumatized, like complex trauma and beyond that.
There's been a direct attempt to steal culture, to take back culture. That's had that impact of intergenerational trauma, the lack of esteem, the lack of strength, the lack of resiliency. How many times have we told kids, how many times have Indigenous kids been told what they can't do, what they're not good at, what they need to do to improve? How about let's build on the strengths that exist? Let's build on the culture that exists. How about let's let people feel good about themselves, and that's the best resiliency to any of this.
the kids that went back home so traumatized and then feeling so disconnected from the people there, what they have internalized and the trauma that they have experienced, they started living that trauma out themselves.
So when they became parents, they weren't able to pass along a loving, nurturing, supporting home. They felt a mistrust because they watched their parents around police officers, around government officials, around the church. Without even knowing it, they were instilled in them an animosity, which can grow into anger.
My experience was poverty. There's obviously the Indian residential schools. I was raised by my grandparents, so I have the intergenerational trauma. The unpaid treaties, there's the Robinson-Huron Treaty litigation right now that hasn't been paid in 150 years. Uneducated, very pretty, so that made me fresh meat to these guys.
Once people are traumatized and they are so disconnected from their embodiment, that whole notion of being able to discern whether they are in trouble or not in trouble, if that person is good or not good, it's very, very difficult for them to discern that. And that is the reason why it is so absolutely huge.
There was an anger inside of me, and I didn't understand why. There was almost a shame that I felt being Indigenous, and then not understanding who I am as a Indigenous person.
One of the biggest things, as for myself too, as an Indigenous woman from Cape Town, South Africa, growing up in apartheid, I had to find my voice and I had to find my strength in myself.
Straying from the sacred way of life was the worst thing I could ever do, but then I never even knew it. My own culture was, people used to make fun of me because my name in the game was Pocahontas, and I never knew the history behind Pocahontas, so people would shame on you. So even those words that still linger in my mind has pushed me to where I am today, because now I actually do know my culture and the history behind our people and what's happening.
With intergenerational trauma, it's like an iceberg. You see only the tip of it, and you don't see everything underneath it until you give your client a safe space to, unfold all those layers, or to be able to work towards what it is that they need on their healing journey.
I'm yet to meet someone who uses substances who doesn't have a history of trauma, whether it be physical, psychological, sexual, emotional.
For both trauma and addiction, there are multiple losses that people go through, and both are diseases of the brain and the nervous system. Once the changes happen in the nucleus accumbens in the brain, now the body begins to believe that my survival depends on this substance that I have to take in. But I lose my family, I lose my eyesight, I lose limbs, but I continue to use. That's the power of the addiction. For years we said, you can't treat the one without the other. The one is there because of the other. When we are traumatized and our whole system, our whole nervous system is in disarray, and we go to that place of the PTSD, and all those symptoms develop, the adaptations to now that PTSD or that trauma brain, it is horrific. The activation of the nervous system, every time we're thinking, oh my goodness, I'm in danger again, it's gonna happen again, kaboom, we're back in trauma response mode. But it's horrible for people to live in that body where they have depression, anxiety, flashbacks, nightmares, can't sleep at night, feeling agitated, feeling horrible, feeling dirty, feeling shame, feeling guilt, because those are all the things that trauma actually give people.
What my patients tell me is that they're using substances to numb either physical pain or emotional pain. So
many of the youth that I work with would say, Teresa, when I took that first spliff, man, I felt like, wow, I felt good. Or when I took that first drink, it just took all of the stuff away from me. So one, you have to treat the two together. They are twins. The one is there because of the other. Now the body begins to believe that my survival depends on this substance that I have to take in. Nobody goes out there and just said, well, today I'm going to go out there and I'm going to become an addict. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that at all.
People who've been trafficked come into contact with healthcare providers multiple times, like 4 or 5 times, before any flags are raised with regard to this. So I think those numbers, could certainly be improved.
Social media has made the trafficker's job so much easier.
Youth specifically feel a false sense of safety, I guess, when using social media.
We can't escape the internet.
Pimps and traffickers can do everything from the comfort of their own home, or from their laptop, from their cellular device, their tablet.
A generation ago, we talked about stranger danger. We talked about being careful in the playgrounds. Still have to be careful in the playgrounds, but what's the playground now? It's online. It's social media, it's the internet, that's where everybody plays, and that's where we have to be careful.
Social media and like using mobile devices, things like that, makes things much more discreet.
There's so much more access to youth, to vulnerable individuals online, through gaming platforms, social media, all different types of connection, and it removes that in-person gut feeling to say that this doesn't quite feel right, because the traffickers are able to take whatever spin that they want on what they project to their potential victims.
The different platforms that are being used by traffickers and also for recruiting has made our jobs quite a bit more complicated. Anytime we seek to gather information or evidence, the information that's required in order to support a judicial authorization is very, very lengthy. And once we retrieve the information, sometimes it's a mountain of data that we have to wade through, make sense of, and determine what's useful in order to support the charges that we want to lay against the perpetrators.
And traffickers don't have to physically be in the same area as their victims. They can do everything online. A lot of times they will create a relationship with someone, ask for like explicit images, and then blackmail that way. They're not really having to do all the work anymore in like the background work of being in that relationship. But again, it's like that false sense of safety in being online and kind of anonymous, but not really. And again, with youth in general, they're at an age where they're trying to establish themselves as independent and move away from their parents, and they feel misunderstood, they feel different, and that's where traffickers come in and start those conversations and listen. It's really easy to listen and just say like that they understand them or that they're right in how they feel, and they're really good at weaseling their way in that way. And again, your parents don't often know because they're not paying attention to what's going on social media, instant messaging, that kind of stuff. It's a very easy way for traffickers to be in contact.
The internet exists everywhere, and it's not something that always works in our favor. It's something that for our clients is very dangerous. It's something that is a gateway for a lot of exploitation of various kinds, and we see it in our clients every day, especially our clients with children and our clients who want to be able to protect those around them, and ourselves working in that profession with access to everything. It gives us a great benefit because we're able to have resources at our fingertips, but for those who know how to exploit that benefit, it becomes very dangerous for our community members and for our clients.
So professionally, I was made aware of human trafficking through my work in a training opportunity, and it really hit home.
We need people to understand what's really going on, and we need people to realize that it's happening in every community.
It does not discriminate based on any age, race, denomination. It's something that affects everybody, whether it affects you personally or affects somebody that you love.
The end goal is the same. We all want to do something to make this a better place for our children or grandchildren one day.
The coalition came together through the efforts of a couple of community organizations. Sudbury Area Victim Services was successful in acquiring a grant that they used to start the Greater Sudbury Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. That was amazing because it brings together all the partners and the stakeholders who have a vested interest in working on the anti-human trafficking campaign.
By having these prevention programs, we are creating family connections, we're creating community connections, we're giving people the skills to be able to navigate life in all of its messy parts and all of its good parts. And by having those prevention pieces in place, we're really giving people the ability to help themselves and have the resiliency to move forward in life.
The women that come through our doors are from all walks of life, all backgrounds, all educations. They are, our sisters, our mothers, our aunts, our best friends.
Being there as partners in their journey, but allowing them to be independent and eventually move on and do their own thing is really where we're looking to go.
There's a whole other range of resources that people need in order to build what we call recovery capital. And recovery capital is basically the resources that you have inside you and outside of you. So your family, loved ones, access to counseling, access to housing.
The more we can talk to people about this, the more awareness we can bring, and it's just the different industries bringing themselves together.
It's very important to me to work in a field and in a way that I feel that I'm making a valuable contribution to my community, that I'm doing something to help to improve the places where we live, learn, work, and play.
Instead of generic, just overarching awareness on any given topic, I like to focus mine to make it applicable knowledge for frontline officers, for them to use within Indigenous community to help build on the trust that the previous officers have created.
All of these projects are built in partnership with Indigenous communities and social service agencies in our community. None of it is police only. And we have to learn as a police organization, police services have to learn. There's a time to lead and there's a time to follow. And so many of these, we're following the lead of Indigenous communities.
So it's of key importance that all of the partners and all of the stakeholders in our community are represented at that table, and that they bring the variety of points of view, concerns, considerations, knowledge, ability, expertise to the table, so that we can all benefit from that collaboration.
So that involves social workers, nursing support, community outreach, peer support workers, housing. It takes a village, really.